Okay, so without further ado, let us begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على من بعث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters, and welcome to what is part number 22 of our Quranic Synopsis series, where we are going through the Quran juz by juz, and we cover all of the sort of surahs and the main themes of those surahs, so that it gives us a good working map with regards to the Quran and how it's laid out, and so that will help us when we, inshallah, recite it for ourselves and go through it ourselves, inshallah, so we're not so lost when we're reciting the Quran. So today, in juz number 22, we're going to cover Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah Al-Saba, and Surah Al-Fatir, and there is a little bit of Yasin, but we're going to save that for tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. We haven't yet covered Sajda, which is part of the previous section, so let us go through that very briefly, inshallah, just so that we have completed all of the surahs in the Quran. So Surah Al-Sajda, it is a Meccan surah, one of the surahs that were very early, revealed very early on. It has many fada'il to it. One of those is that the Prophet ﷺ, he would never sleep at night until he read two surahs. The first of which was Surah Al-Mulk, Tabarak alladhi biyadihi al-mulk, and the second of which was this surah, Surah Al-Sajda. He would never ever go to sleep unless he had read those two surahs, both of which have 30 ayat in them, so they're very well balanced. So a total of 60 ayat before he used to sleep, subhanAllah. And where are we with regards to that? Ajib. We're content with Allahumma bismika amutu wa ahya and So this is a sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to recite this surah before going to sleep. It talks about sort of tawheed, prophethood, and the hereafter, the three realities that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he came with to the entire world, and it invites them to believe in all these three things, and it sets out sort of a primitive proofs for why this should be the case, why there is only one God, why the messenger is who he is, and there is such thing as a hereafter, so prepare for it. So there's a sajda, so it's called Surah Al-Sajda. One of the reasons is because there is a sajda in this particular surah, and that occurs in verse number 15. إِنَّمَا يُؤْمِنُ بِآيَاتِنَا الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهَا خَرُّوا سُجَّدًا وَسَبَّحُوا بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ وَهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. That only those who believe in the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he has sent to mankind, whether that be this Qur'an or everything around them, إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهَا, if they are reminded of those signs, خَرُّوا سُجَّدًا, they fall in prostration to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَسَبَّحُوا بِحَمْدِ رَبِّهِمْ وَهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ, and they praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glorify him, and free him from any deficiencies, associating to him any deficiencies, whether that be he has a son, or whether that be he is a man, or whether it be that he can't create or can't do certain things, and so on and so forth. They glorify him and they free him from all these deficiencies. وَهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ, and they are not in the slightest way, shape, or form arrogant and proud. And then so then it goes on to describe these people a little bit more, right? These people who believe and have these characteristics, there's some more characteristics about them, right? These people who prostrate to their Lord. Here's a little bit more about them. تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع يدعون ربهم خوفا وطمعا ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. Right. Here's a bit of inspiration, a little bit of motivation for us in Ramadan when we want to stand the night in prayer. These guys who are known to prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of the iman, and when they are reminded of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all they have in themselves is just to fall in prostration and recognize the majesty of Allah. These people, تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع, they are forever separated from their beds at night, right? يدعون ربهم خوفا وطمعا, and they call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this sort of the silent hours of the night when everybody else is sleeping and everyone is overcome by slumber. These believers will stand up in prayer, they will prostrate to their Lord, and they will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of fear and out of love, out of want and out of sort of the need for protection. They will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he coins this, right? تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُم. These people, they leave their beds, they wake up at night, and then they go and pray, right? That's basically the meaning of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to say. But the way in which he says it is that تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُم, right? Junub is your side, right? The side of you. This is your jump. تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع. Your مضاجع, your مضجع, the place that you lie in, right? So your side, you lie down, obviously, you go to sleep like that, right? But tajafa is taken from the word jafa. And jafa is when, you know, when someone is blanking you, like blatantly in your face, blanking you, like not even talking to you. You say Assalamu alaikum to him and he just turns his face. No, I'm not talking to you, right? Literally ignoring, avoiding, you know, if he sees you coming in one path, he's going to take the other path. That's the kind of relationship that they have, not with people, but that's the kind of relationship they have with their sleep, with their beds. They are constantly avoiding, they want to avoid ever meeting their bed, right? And they will get upset if they sleep for too long, or if they slept the entire night and they haven't woken up and they haven't asked Allah for anything. They haven't made dua or they haven't stood in prayer. SubhanAllah. What a contrast it is from us today, right? We get angry if we don't get our 8 hours sleep. We get cranky, we're upset, and we're agitated for the entire day because we haven't got enough sleep. These guys are cranky and annoyed because they've had too much sleep. SubhanAllah. And how much did the Prophet ﷺ even sleep? فلا تعلم نفس ما أخفي لهم من قرة أعين جزاء بما كانوا يعملون. But, you know, we don't know ourselves and our minds. We cannot comprehend what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reserved for us if we are to be of these people who stand in the middle of the night, these people who stand up in prayer when everybody else is asleep, right? فلا تعلم نفس ما أخفي لهم من قرة أعين. You don't know what happinesses Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in store for you. Either the happinesses that you receive for standing up in prayer at night when everyone else is sleeping, i.e. on the day of judgment, in the akhirah, in heaven, those are the things that you are going to receive for standing up in prayer, or the very action itself of standing up in the night and praying when everyone else is sleeping, the very happiness, the very contentment, that tranquility that you get at that time when you're doing that, is no one else knows that except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one else knows that relationship that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one else knows the feeling that you get inside your heart and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts inside of you. And we are qawmun mujarrabun or mujarribun. We are people of experience, right? We don't like to just say things just for the sake of saying things without having actually experienced them, right? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this sort of stuff, we should be ones that hear it and say, you know what, let me try it, right? Everyone, the world is sleeping and I'm going to stand in prayer where no one else can see me, and only it's a relationship between me and my Lord. Anyway, then the surah goes on to mention many different things. Towards the end, it is talking about how the kuffar of Quraysh, they are wanting the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come on them. So they're like, وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْفَتْحُ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. When is this day of judgment? When is this day of reckoning going to come? If you truly are truthful. قُلْ يَوْمُ الْفَتْحِ الَّذِي لَا يَنْفَعُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِيمَانُهُم وَلَا هُمْ يُنظَرُونَ. The reply though is immense, right? It doesn't say it's going to come, only Allah knows when it's going to come, you just have to wait for it, I'm waiting too with you, and all the other replies that we've seen before, right? He says, قُلْ يَوْمُ الْفَتْحِ لَا يَنْفَعُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. The day in which the day of reckoning comes, it's not going to benefit anybody that disbelieved, right? So you guys are disbelievers and you're asking, when is this day going to come? So instead of asking about the day, work towards that day. Do something, make a difference to your life so that you're prepared for that day when it comes. You actually have some form of iman, even if it's a small iota, a tiny little seed's worth of iman in your heart. At least you'll have that on the day of judgment. Instead of sitting there on your chairs, on your high horses saying, oh, when is this day going to come? It's never going to come. And then when it comes, you're like, Ya Ilahi. Subhanallah. فَأَعْرِضْ عَنْهُمْ وَانْتَظِرْ إِنَّهُمْ مُنْتَظِرُونَ. So leave them and let them wait for verily. Leave them and wait for verily, they are also waiting. Then we get on to Surah Al-Ahzab. Okay, Surah Al-Ahzab, I said just a second ago that Surah Al-Ahzab is a very, very busy surah. It's a Medinan surah, so it's a Medinan surah mixed amongst a whole bunch of Meccan surahs. And we know, if we haven't had sort of any experience with Medinan surahs in the past, that there is a lot going on in them. There's a lot of discourse, and those discourse, more often than not, they are separated. They are separate one from another, and sometimes they are connected. And this is very much a separate discourse, or the discourses that takes place in this surah, they are very much separate but also connected, as they take place all in pretty much the same time frame, although they were revealed separately on separate occasions and separate incidences for separate things. So separate. This surah was revealed around the time of the Battle of the Trench, and that took place in the 50th year of the Hijrah. It documents the Battle of the Trench. It documents what happened with the people of Banu Qurayza, which was a Jewish tribe in Medina, one of two others, and the Prophet's marriage with Zainab. These are the most important instances in this particular surah. Before we go into this surah, though, a little bit of a backdrop, because it's going to deal with a lot of things aside from those three that I just mentioned. So let's have a little bit of a backdrop. So the 50th year of the Hijrah, Ghazwat al-Ahzab, Ghazwat al-Khandaq, the Battle of the Trenches taking place. Now, between then and the Battle of Uhud, a lot of things have happened in order for the instance or the scenario and the Battle of the Trench to actually take place. So a lot of precursors. So we know what happened in the Battle of Uhud. The Muslims lost, and the Meccans, they went back to Mecca victorious, and the Muslims returned to Medina having been defeated. Although they were defeated on the battlefield, morally though, they were still in high spirits, even though bodily they had many, many cuts and bruises. So since the Battle of Uhud to the Battle of the Trench, it's called the Ghazwat al-Khandaq or Ghazwat al-Ahzab, the Battle of the Confederates. So because all of the tribes of the Arabs united. And the reason why that was is because things took place between Uhud. So when Uhud happened and the Muslims lost, this instilled into the neighboring Arab tribes a sense of tama', which is like this want of eradicating the Prophet ﷺ and the believers who they saw were causing a lot of mischief and causing a lot of trouble in the Arabian Peninsula. They were ruining their way of life. The trades and the agreements that they had with certain people who had now become Muslim were now teetering on the edge and breaking down. They had allied with their enemies, and their enemies were fighting against them. So when they had won, this gave them wind and strength to think that they can actually now have a piece of the Muslims as well. So Bani Asad in Najd, they planned to raid Medina. So they got an army together and a contingent together to go down to Medina and raid it. So the Prophet ﷺ, he dispatched 150 men, and they fought in a a minor battle, but there wasn't much fighting, and Bani Asad were caught unawares and they ran away. The tribes of Adal and Qara, they wanted to learn about Islam, right? So they told the Prophet ﷺ to send some emissaries to them so that they can learn a bit about the deen of Islam. So the Prophet ﷺ, he sent about 6 or 7 people to these guys, and on the way, one of their allies called Hudayl, they attacked them on the instruction of Adal and Qara, and they murdered 4 of them, and they took 2 of them as slaves, and they sold them to the pagans in Mecca. So they were back in Mecca as slaves. Ajib. And then Bani Amir, which was probably the worst incident that happened. Bani Amir wanted the same thing. So they also asked the Prophet ﷺ to send them emissaries about the same time. I think it even happened in the same month as well. So they both sort of sent out at the same time. And it was about 40 of them though. So there was quite a lot of people. 40 of the Ansar, 40 of the believers, they went out in order to instruct and teach these people about Islam because they had an interest in entering into the fold of Islam. So they said. But what happened was they surrounded them and they killed them, all of them, and they didn't leave anybody to survive. So this was really, really hard on the Prophet ﷺ, and there were many skirmishes back and forth with many of the neighboring tribes. But the Prophet ﷺ, he answered all of these instances with sending contingents himself to those who had either attacked him or who had planned to attack him as well. So it wasn't like they were defeated in the Battle of Uhud, so they just sat back and they were like, oh, that's it, we got defeated, and they were wallowing in their sorrows. No, they picked themselves up, they showed courage, and they persevered through the difficulties that they had, either physically, mentally, and also they were being taunted by the hypocrites, saying how weak they were and so on and so forth, and how they got beaten at Uhud, and had they not left for the Battle of Uhud, many of them would still be alive, and so on and so forth, and that sort of thing. Also, we saw a lot of social reforms that were happening between the Battle of Uhud and this time now. So in Surah An-Nisa, we took a long time ago now, quite a few weeks ago, about how laws of inheritance, laws of adoption, and so on and so forth, and the orphan's wealth and how that is to be distributed, and so on and so forth. All of those things were laid out during this period, this 2-year period. So there's a lot of turmoil, right? There's they're being attacked from outside of Medina, from the north, east, and south. They are, within Medina there are, there's things going on, and there's things happening, and there's also sort of towards the end of sort of in the fourth year of the Hijrah, the precarious sort of deal with Banu Nadir came to an end. So when the Prophet ﷺ first came to Medina after the Hijrah, he made a deal with all of the tribes all of the Jewish tribes in Medina, that we will protect one another. If ever Medina is to be attacked, we will all hold fast together and we will fight our enemy together, right? But after the Battle of Uhud, Banu Nadir, they plotted and planned with the hypocrites and with the pagan Arabs to kill the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when all of this stuff was going on outside of Medina, right? Bani Asad, Bani Amir, and all these people was, killing emissaries and, planning to attack Medina and so on and so forth. So the Prophet ﷺ has to send an army here, he has to send a contingent there, he has to sort these people out here, and he has to deal with the deaths and the widows and the orphans of those people who have been left behind, of all the people who have been killed and so on and so forth. All this stuff is going on, right? And the Prophet ﷺ has to deal with it. His revelation is coming left, right, center. Really tumultuous time. At the same time, whilst all of this is going on, you think you're safe in Medina, right? Even in Medina, Banu Nadir, they plotted and planned to kill the Prophet ﷺ. So he went and he surrounded their fortress, because the Jews, they lived in fortresses in Medina, in and around Medina, and they surrounded that fortress, and all of the inhabitants of Banu Nadir were told to leave the city. So they left. Many of them, they went up towards sort of like Sham, towards Syria and those areas, and many of them went to Khaybar, which was another stronghold of the Jews. So it was a very tumultuous time. A lot's happening. So that's like the sort of the build up to Ghazwat al-Khandaq, or the Battle of the Trench. Now we get to the Battle of the Trench, which is the 5th year of the Hijrah, and the tribes of Arabia have all gotten together in order to attack the Prophet ﷺ in Medina. So the Quraysh got together with many of the tribes from the north, like Ghatafan, and Asad, and Adal and Qara, and all these other tribes that we've mentioned before. And it was all instigated by the Jews who had been banished, Banu Nadir and the Banu Qaynuqa, who were in Khaybar at the time. So the two Jewish tribes from the north came from Khaybar down towards Medina. The tribes of Hawazin and Ghatafan and Asad and all these guys, they came from the east to attack Medina. And from the south came Quraysh and whoever had sided with Quraysh from the neighboring tribes around Mecca. So literally they were coming from all sides. Now they didn't come from the west, because the west was rocky mountains and it was pretty much protected. From the north, there were gardens and there were lots of like sort of foliages and stuff, and trees and all sorts. So it was very difficult for a large army to come through. So they weren't able to attack from the north either. From the south, it was very similar. There were a lot of sort of it was a rocky region, as well as the fortress of what are they called? The third tribe, Banu Qurayza, sorry, I skipped my mind. So Banu Qurayza was another tribe in Medina at the time, and they had a fortress to the south of the city, and that was also protecting them as well. And so that meant that the only way that these Confederates could actually attack Medina was from the eastern side, right? So that's a bit of the backdrop of the battle and how it's going to happen. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was a bit worried about all of this that was going on, and so he sort of did shura. He held a council with his companions, and they advised him. One of them, especially, which was Salman al-Farsi, he said that, look, in Persia, what we do is when we're going to be surrounded by the enemy and we have like sort of weak points, what we do is we build a trench and we entrench ourselves in the city so they can't come through that trenched area. And so the only exposed area was the eastern side of the city. So they built the trench, or they dug the trench there. And the Prophet ﷺ and all of the companions, they all sort of worked hard in order to build this trench. Now, while this stuff was all going on, right, within the city, there's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of sort of, everyone's getting scared. Those who have hypocrisy in their hearts and don't have firm iman, they are now sort of, accusing the Prophet ﷺ of bringing this plight on them. It's all his fault. He never should have attacked, and he never should have done this and never should have done that, and dude, these guys hate you. They're your enemies. They're going to come and attack you. They've attacked you before. What's different now? They're just attacking you on the front door. If you don't stand up to them yesterday and you don't stand up to them today, then they're either going to overtake you today or they're going to overtake you tomorrow, as long as you do not stand up and defend your rights. So all of this stuff was going on within Medina as well. So a little bit about Banu Qurayza. Banu Qurayza were the last Jewish tribe that was in Medina, and they had a fortress, like I said, in the south of the city. And the Prophet ﷺ, he had to deal with all of the Jewish tribes in Medina, many of which had broken those pacts. Banu Nadir and Banu Qaynuqa had already broken those pacts, and they were on the side of the Confederates, and they were outside Medina with the pagan Arabs fighting against the Muslims at the time. And the forces of these Confederates, they equaled to about 10,000 to 12,000 strong in terms of their numbers. So a massive army, all camped outside of Medina. There is nowhere for the Arabs to go. There's nowhere for the Muslims to go. They can't go out. They can't have anything from outside come in. It's a very, very, very difficult place to be in. Anyway, so whilst all this stuff is going on, so now that they're all sort of entrenched in Medina, they are relatively safe and they're ready for the battle now. And it's all about sort of waiting it out and who is going to sort of cave in first. And the Meccans, they weren't used to, well, the Arabs in general, they weren't used to this form of this style or this tactic of warfare. So they weren't used to a trench. They didn't know how to deal with it. So they didn't know how to traverse it or surpass it. So they were pretty much stuck outside in a siege. And this siege lasted for about a month. Now, in the beginning, they recognized that there was no way into Medina. And the only possible sort of, pathway that they could probably find was if they were able to convince Banu Qurayza, which was the Jewish tribe in the south, to break their allegiance with the Prophet ﷺ and allow them passage through their fortress, right? Now, the Muslims, they didn't recognize that this was even a possibility. They had even sent a lot of their families to go and stay in the fortress of Banu Qurayza at the time, because of obviously Medina was going to be exposed, and if ever fighting took place in Medina, then the houses are going to be exposed, right? So when the fighting started, and when they finally came, and when they arrived at Medina, all this stuff was going on, and so it was Huyay ibn Akhtab, who was the leader of Banu an-Nadir, who sent himself, and he came to Banu Qurayza in the sort of early hours of the morning when no one else could see him, and he made his way into the fortress of Banu Qurayza, and he started to incite them to go against the Prophet ﷺ. So initially, Banu Qurayza were like, no, my friend, we've seen what happened to you. You plotted to kill the Prophet ﷺ, and now you guys have been banished from Medina. The Prophet ﷺ has a pact and an agreement with us, and he has honored that agreement, and we are going to honor that agreement with him. So they stood firm against Huyay, and they didn't give in to his demands, and didn't give in to his whispers and his sort of encouragement to break all ties with the Muslims. But Huyay is not going to just leave it at that. So he continued and he persisted until he managed to convince the leaders of Banu Qurayza to actually break the pact. And he said to them that, look, I, Huyay ibn Ka'b, the leader of Banu Nadir, have gathered all of the pagan tribes together under one banner, all with the intent to kill the Prophet ﷺ and rid us of the Muslims forever. And this is going to be the only chance that you're ever going to have to do this. So either you do it now, or you live forever like the situation that you are living in, subservient to the Muslims. And it wasn't like they were subservient to the Muslims. They had an agreement. You guys do you, we do us. If Medina is attacked, then we are all going to rise up together, right? And we don't break that pact in any way, shape, or form, and for any reason whatsoever. And that was all agreed on, and that was sworn by. And Allah is a witness over that agreement. So they are persuaded, and they're like, you know what? Yes, let's get rid of these people, right? SubhanAllah. And it's not like, honor your agreements. Awfu bil uqud. Where is that, man? Where is that with these guys? So non-existent. And they would rather xenophobically, get rid of these Muslims that had come to Medina for refuge from their own people. And here it is that their own people are on their doorstep now and wanting to kill them in their new homes. So anyway, the battle sort of ensues, and it begins, and there's There's all sorts going on. Now, the Prophet he catches wind of Huyay ibn Ka'b coming to the Banu Qurayza and sort of persuading them to break their pact. So he sends a number of companions, from them Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, from them Abdullah ibn Rawaha, and a couple of others. They went to Banu Qurayza and they wanted to find out if it was true that they had actually broken the pact. So they rode up to the gates of Banu Qurayza and they called out. And from the very tops of the wall, Banu Qurayza looked down and they said that there is no agreement between ourselves and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So go back. And the Prophet he told these guys, right, these companions, that when you go there, if you find that they are honoring their agreement, then come back and say that in front of everybody. Tell everybody, all of the Muslims, that Banu Qurayza, they're still intact, they're still with us, they're still supporting us. But if you find that they have broken their pact, then come and tell me only. So it was. They came back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they told him, Ya Rasulullah, and they said to him two words, Adal wa Qara, right? And Adal and Qara are the tribes that killed those 40 emissaries that went to them to tell them about Islam, right? So what they wanted to say was, look, Banu Qurayza, they are doing exactly what Adal and Qara did. They are saying something, but behind what they are saying is treachery, and they are going to kill us. So, so this was this was a really, really bad turn of events for the Prophet ﷺ. And unfortunately, word spread from that point onwards. Word started to spread in Medina that Banu Qurayza had actually sided with the Confederates, right? So now the hypocrites had even more fuel for the fire, and they started to say things like, "This man, aka the Prophet ﷺ, had promised us, we were going to defeat the Romans, and we're going to defeat the Persians, and we're going to sit on their thrones as they sat once upon a time. And look at us here; we can't even go out of Medina to relieve ourselves." And many of them who were amongst the ranks of the Muslims in terms of getting ready for battle, they would then leave the front lines, sometimes without telling the Prophet ﷺ. Other times they would say, look, my house is under attack and I have to go there and I have to defend my family. And if I don't defend my family, the family are going to die. And they would leave, right, the front lines. And all of that to sow discord and disunity and worry and grief amongst the ranks of the Muslims. And it worked. Everyone was really, really shook. But those who were firm in their iman recognized that this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us. He promised that every single one of these pagan Arabs will rise up against us. And look, they are right on our doorstep and they have risen up against us. This is a promise of Allah and He is fulfilling His promise. And He also promised us victory. So we are going to fulfill that promise. So they were steadfast, mashallah. Now, all this is going on. There is a person from the tribe of Ghatafan, who were one of the Confederate tribes, who had become a Muslim. His name was Nu'aym ibn Mas'ud. And Nu'aym ibn Mas'ud, he came to the Prophet ﷺ under the sort of the quiet hours of the night, under the sort of the veil of darkness. And he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, Ya Rasulullah, verily I'm a Muslim, but my people, they've dragged me along with them on this battle, but I am not one to fight against you. So use me in the way that best befits you. Subhanallah. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ جُنُودَ رَبِّكَ إِلَّا هُ. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's soldiers are, you don't know where the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to come. So the Prophet ﷺ, he tells Nu'aym, he's like, look, go and sow discord amongst the Confederates. Right? So no one knows that he's Muslim except for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he goes to Banu Qurayza first and foremost. And he knocks on the door of Banu Qurayza. And Banu Qurayza, they know Nu'aym, and Nu'aym knows Banu Qurayza, and they go way back. So he's not a foreigner to them. So he seems like, Nu'aym, how you doing? How's everything going? Are we ready? Let's do this. So Nu'aym is like, yeah, let's do this. But before we do it, right? There's something you guys got to know. That the Confederates, I don't think they're going to be sort of faithful to their own agreements. And I don't think they're going to be able to see the battle through. So just in case, right? Because you guys are, if they don't see the battle through, they can just turn around and go back home. And they don't have to live amongst the Muslims. But you guys live right next door to the Muslims. And you guys, obviously shown your cards. So if this battle doesn't go the way you expect it to go, you guys are going to be in trouble. So just in case, right, that the pagans and the Confederates, they do decide to turn their backs, make sure you take from them some form of what's the word? Something that some form of guarantee, right? Take a guarantee from them, and take it in the form of like some men that come to you from them, from amongst the heads of their tribes, right? So they're like, okay, cool, that sounds like a good idea. But let's just see how it goes. We don't really know whether you're telling the truth or not. So they were a bit worried nonetheless, right? Because they don't know Nu'aym to be a liar. Nu'aym then goes to the Confederates, to the head of the Confederates. From them, Abu Sufyan and all the heads of the Quraysh and Ghatafan and all these other tribes. And they go to them and Banu Nadir as well. Go to them and he starts speaking to them and he says, you know what? I don't think Banu Qurayza are actually going to side with you. They may have just said that they're going to side with you, but they've been right next to the Muslims, so it may be that they're just giving you lip service, and in fact they are going to sort of they're not going to fight with you. They're going to side with the Muslims instead. So don't enter the battle until you take from them a guarantee, right, that they actually are going to fight. So they're like, you know what, this is interesting. And they started to question now Banu Qurayza and whether Banu Qurayza were actually on their side. So they sent a messenger to Banu Qurayza and they said, look, guys, we're tired of the siege outside. Why don't you guys go and fight and start the fight so that we can come in from wherever you're positioned and actually assist you. And that way, we can win. And instead of just sitting outside of Medina and waiting here for hours and hours and hours and days and days and days and no fighting is happening. So Banu Qurayza, they send a reply back saying, look, we're not going to start the fight until you send us some form of guarantee. So send us some men from the heads of your tribes so that we know that the fighting is actually going to happen. You're actually going to help us out, right? When the fighting takes place. So both of them, when this happened, excuse me, both of them said to one another, Nu'aym was telling the truth. These guys are not going to help us, right? Subhanallah. And thus it was that discord began to spread from amongst the Confederates and their allies. Now, 28 days later, there is a massive sandstorm that takes over Medina and its surrounding areas, right? And this sandstorm, it hits the Confederates tribe really, really hard, right? And they're out there in their tents. They don't exactly have houses or anything like that to protect them. They're out there in their tents with all of their sort of like, their camels and their horses and their men and their provisions and stuff like that. And they're just getting battered with this sandstorm. And it's already cold. It's already nighttime, and they just had enough. So the heads of Mecca, they say, look, I can't take it anymore. We've been here for almost a month, and now this sandstorm has come. I'm going back. So a lot of the heads, they go back, and a lot of the people, they follow them. So Banu Nadir and Banu Qaynuqa, they also retreat and go back to Khaybar. And the rest of the tribes, obviously, they're not going to sit there and wait for the Muslims to come out the next day. So they also pack up their bags and they also leave. The next day, the Prophet ﷺ, he comes out to the battlefield, and the rest of the companions, they come out to the battlefield after the sandstorm, and they see that there is not a sign of any of the Confederates left. SubhanAllah. All of them have deserted and gone back. And so it was a great victory for the Muslims, and one that that spread through the Arabian Peninsula. That the strength of the Muslims was really, really shown in that battle. They had resolve, and they persevered, and they were patient, and Allah's help. It ended up being Allah's help that assisted them and aided them to be victorious. That's the battle that took place. When the Prophet ﷺ returned home, and the battle was all said and done, he went to take off his armor and relax, have a shower, and just relax after a hard day's work. But the angel Jibreel alayhi salam came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and told him not to take off his armor and go to Banu Qurayza and sort out the discord that they had sown amongst the ranks of the Muslim and the treachery that they had committed. So the Prophet ﷺ, he orders the Muslims to go to Banu Qurayza and do not pray Asr until you get there. And now the companions, there was a group of companions left, and at the head of them was Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Some of those companions understood from the words of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam that we're not allowed to pray Asr in its entirety at all until we arrive in at Banu Qurayza. And some of them understood that the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted us to be as quick as possible. Not that we delay our Asr until Banu Qurayza, but just be as quick as possible so that when Asr comes, we pray Asr at its normal time, but we get to Banu Qurayza as quick as possible. So some prayed along the way and some prayed when they actually got there, which shows you that even the Sahaba, they differed with regards to what the Prophet ﷺ had instructed them with. And the Prophet ﷺ, he agreed with both sides. He didn't say that one of the two groups was wrong and the other one was right. Anyway, so they got to Banu Qurayza, and the Banu Qurayza started hurling abuse at Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu and this small contingent of companions that had come forth at the command of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But shortly afterwards, the rest of the Muslims had come with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at its head to the fortress of Banu Qurayza, and then they recognized that, we are in some serious trouble. So they were besieged for 3 weeks, and after the 3-week period, they couldn't take it anymore, and they said to the Prophet ﷺ, look, send us Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. Now, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, he was the head of the Ansar, and he was someone who was a very good friend to the Jews of Bani Qurayza before the advent of the Messenger ﷺ. So they thought that they could see in Sa'd ibn Mu'adh a friend and someone who could parlay on their behalf. So Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, he came, and he said, okay, I will deal justly, inshallah. And he ruled that every man from Banu Qurayza was to be killed, put to death. The death penalty is for every man of Banu Qurayza, and the rest of it is the spoils of war. Now, previously, we've spoken about Banu Nadir, who had been treacherous towards the Muslims. We've spoken about Banu Qaynuqa, who were also amongst the Confederates to fight against the Muslims. And the last tribe that remained was Banu Qurayza, who the Prophet ﷺ still had a pact with, but they ended up breaking that pact still, right? So after all of these acts of treachery, the Prophet ﷺ has shown lenience again and again and again. And finally now at the dire point in the battle, where everything was hinged on the fact that Banu Qurayza had sided with the pagans, that had they done so and had things not taken the turns that it did, the Muslims would have been wiped out, and that would have been the end of not just the Muslims but everybody else in Medina, right? So it was a seemingly harsh punishment, but one that was seen to have been just and is just, that was agreed with by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala above the 7 heavens, as the Prophet ﷺ said to Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. And that was the end of that particular battle. So anyway, let's go through. That's enough of the context, inshallah. Let's go through a little bit of the surah, inshallah, and touch on some of the ayat that speak about a lot of what we've just mentioned, inshallah ta'ala. So the first 8 ayat are talking about relationships between people, relationships between people, one another. And in terms of how men and women, in terms of spousal relationships, to how they're related, how other people are related with regards to adopting children and not adopting children, right? And obviously we're going to see the story of the Prophet ﷺ's marriage to Zainab. Now the Prophet ﷺ's marriage to Zainab was an interesting one, because she was actually married to Zayd. And Zayd, he was actually the adopted son in Jahiliyyah of the Prophet ﷺ. So in pre-Islam, when you adopt a child into your family, that child becomes part and parcel of your family in its entirety. So he inherits from you. He cannot marry from your children, and all these other things that are related to familial relationships. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted to abolish that, right? Because that wasn't a person that you adopt. He's not your son, and he's not your real son. And those who are your real children shouldn't miss out just because this other person is added to your family by some form of compassion and affection that you have in your own self. While it's a good thing, while it's perfectly fine and perfectly nice to look out for orphans or look out for other people, but to bring them into your family like that and to have them as equals to your own children is something that we have to draw a line with, and that is what the Prophet ﷺ set out to do, and that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set out to do at the beginning of this particular surah. So 1 to 8 is dealing with that. Then from 9 to 27 is dealing with the affairs that took place and the events that took place in the Battle of the Trench, right? So, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ جاءتكم جنود فأرسلنا عليهم ريحا وجنودا لم تروها. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, remember the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the entire confederate of the Arabs, they all joined forces together against you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent a wind, and He sent against them soldiers that you even cannot see. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرًا. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was, with regards to you guys, all aware of what you do. هُنَالِكَ ابْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. That is the point in time where the mu'minun were the most tried. They were at the very brink of وَزُلْزِلُوا زِلْزَالًا شَدِيدًا. They were at the very brink, and the very ground beneath them, it was as if the very ground beneath them was shaking like an earthquake. وإذ يقول المنافقون والذين في قلوبهم مرض ما وعدنا الله ورسوله إلا غرورا. And that time when the hypocrites, they all enunciated and pronounced equally that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger have promised us is nothing but deceit. So it goes on to mention all of the events. قد يعلم الله المعوقين منكم والقائلين لإخوانهم هلم إلينا ولا يأتون البأس إلا قليلا. So they tried to sort of, tell all the other companions that, look, come and join us, at the back of the pack. Come and join us in our own homes, and don't go out to fight, because verily you will be of the losers. But لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the best of examples. لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ. For the one who wishes to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to see Him on the Day of Judgment. وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. And the one who remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala much. In him is the best of examples. He was there with the rest of his companions digging out the trench. He was there in the front lines. He was the one who was tying onto his belly stones and rocks out of the sheer hunger that he was feeling with the rest of his companions. He was in it with them, right? He wasn't one of those leaders that left his people to suffer while he was in his palace. No, he was there on the ground with them, suffering with until their very victory. Verses number 28 to 35 are dealing with the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So at this time, right, after the battle and build up to the battle, the Prophet had a lot to do, right? And we've spoken about all the events that took place. Whilst that was going on, the Prophet, he wasn't able to work like any other normal man. He wasn't able to conduct his affairs in business like any other person. So he wasn't able to have a living like everyone else, which shows you, subhanAllah, the amazing sort of character of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he's able to sacrifice his time and his effort, and he doesn't get any payment in return. La as'alukum ajra, right? He's not asking for any payment, and he's not getting any payment, and he's living in sort of like, he's worse off than many of the other companions that were following him. Yet he is their leader, right? SubhanAllah, lead by example, right? So some of his wives were, they were experiencing that hardship, and the Prophet ﷺ, he was also put in difficulty, not just with everything that's going on, but when he returned home, he was put in difficulty because of his own sort of wives, because of complaining that, look, we haven't got this, we haven't got that, we need this, we need that. So the Prophet ﷺ, it was revealed to him, يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك إن كنتن تردن الحياة الدنيا وزينتها فتعالين أمتعكن وأسرحكن سراحا جميلا. Right? That, look, I'm going to give you a choice. Either you live with me and you stay with me and you continue being my wives, and you wish for Allah and His Messenger and the hereafter, so stay with me and I will accept you and you will stay with me. But if you wish for the dunya, and if you wish for some ease and a life other than this, then say so, and I will. وإن كنتن تردن الله أمتعكن وأسرحكن سراحا جميلا. I will sort of there'll be no sort of discord between us. There'll be no ill feelings. I will let you guys go, and I will also give you a khula as well, a payment as well, so that you'll be at ease as well when you go. And leave, so you're not sort of like destitute and you haven't left me with nothing and so on and so forth, but you have something to go with you, and inshallah you can find somebody else to be with. Like this is something that I can't give you, and it's not like sort of either be part of my life or or get lost. It wasn't like that. It was like, look, I would love for you guys to be my wives, and I would love to live in peace and tranquility and happiness with you guys, but there is a lot going on. And there is a lot on my shoulders, and I have a lot of responsibilities to carry out, and it stops me from doing X, Y, Z. I would love to provide those things for you, but I can't. If you guys really, really, like really need those things and you can't live without those things, then tell me, and I won't, force you to stay with me so that you have to go through all of this stuff. And we live in sort of in discord amongst us. Rather tell me and be honest with me, and it's totally fine. And we'll go our separate ways, and we can both be happy, inshallah, right? And that was the kind of way it was done. And none of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ chose other than the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, there are special dispensations given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with regards to who he can marry, because there was a big deal made when he actually married Zainab, right? Which is also mentioned. Sorry, I'm a bit lost here. Yes, it's also mentioned in verse number 37. Sorry, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. So in verse number 37, the story of Zainab alayha salam wa radiyallahu ta'ala anha is mentioned, and his marriage to her. Now, there's a sort of a bit of a backdrop to this story as well, right? So a big deal was made when he married Zainab, because Zainab was married to Zayd, who was the adopted son of the Prophet ﷺ in Jahiliyyah. And what the Prophet ﷺ wanted to do was, look, your true relationships with regards to your family are like this, right? Those who are born to you and so on and so forth. But those who are, who you claim, and they call them ad'iyah, so you claim are your children, you claim are your sons, they're not actually your real sons. Be good to them, bring them into your family and so on and so forth, but they don't have the same rights as your children do, right? So your daughters, they have to do parda. They have to cover themselves in front of them, right? They can actually marry from them if need be. This person doesn't inherit you like your other children inherit you, and so on and so forth, right? So he wanted to set out these laws, and because they were rooted in passion, they were rooted in love and affection, and there were a lot of sort of ties that were built as a result of this. This needed something drastic in order for it to be changed, and the marriage to Zainab radiyallahu ta'ala anha was that catalyst to change that very concept that was really embedded in the minds of many of the Sahaba as well. So, but it said that when this happened, the hypocrites, they all started saying that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, look at him, he's marrying the wife of his son, and he just fell in love with her when he saw her, so that's why he just wants to marry her. So all of these like sort of crazy stories were coming out with regards to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's absurd to think that, because Zainab was actually the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's known her since she was a child. So if it was the case that he wanted her, he could have had her ages ago. On top of that, Zayd was he was a freed slave, and Zainab was obviously she was a free woman from Mecca, right? So here she is marrying a former slave, and he's also poor, and Zainab is not exactly she's quite well off. So you have someone from high society getting married to someone from low society. And this marriage actually took place with the influence of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. He actually told Zainab, look, marry this man. I want you to marry this man. Her and her family didn't want the marriage to take place. They were like, no, we can't. We're sami'na wa ta'na, but we prefer not to, because it's just this the disparity between the two people. They're two different people, come from two different worlds. They just won't click. Their personalities will clash, and it just won't work, right? So that was the idea behind it. So the Prophet was like, no, try it, let it work and see how it goes, inshallah. If it doesn't work, then fine, no problem, but at least give it a go. So they gave it a go, and they didn't get along, and so Zayd, he divorced Zainab, and so the Prophet then married Zainab after that, right? So that was the story behind it all. So if the Prophet wanted to, he fell in love with Zainab and wanted to marry Zainab, then he didn't have to go through all of that sort of long story, get him Zayd married to Zainab, and then get him divorced with Zainab, and then marry Zainab, and what's the point? So that wasn't the case in its entirety. But those are the things that came up as a result of that. But it changed the very sort of thinking of the Arabs at the time, and set the course for the rest for the future, inshallah. So what else is going on in this surah? The ayah of hijab is also mentioned. Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu qul li azwajika wa banatika wa nisa'il mu'minina yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihinna dhalika adna an yu'rafna fala yu'dhain وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. So tell, O Prophet of Allah, tell your wives and your daughters and the believing women that they should cover the yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihinna, that they should allow the sort of the cloak or the veil to fall from above them. ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين وكان الله غفورا رحيما. That is better for them, that they would be known and they would not be harmed. وكان الله غفورا رحيما, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is oft forgiving, most merciful. And then from that point onwards to the end of the surah, it is a very sort of coarse and harsh sort of ayat with regards to the munafiqun and their ultimate end, which is going to be Jahannam. And the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes them in this particular section is really, really raw. Have a read of it yourselves to get a sort of a good taste and a good idea of what is actually happening there. And that concludes Surah Al-Ahzab. Again, a lot of things going on. I tried my best, inshallah, to provide some context to all of the different discourses that are happening. There are some things that we didn't actually touch on, but the vast majority of which we did. Walillahi alhamd. Let's take a little breather, inshallah. Let's see what's happening in the world of comments and questions. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Is it correct or disliked? Oh, we've answered the question, haven't we? Nadeem Bhai is asking, all research shows that to maintain mental and physical health, it is imperative to have around 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. My guy, mashallah. This is backed by solid research. Read the book, Why We Sleep, The New Science of Sleep and Dreams by Matthew Walker. I highly recommend. Or YouTube TED Talks videos by him. The finding is backed by 25 years of proper scientific research covering many countries and societies in the world. Sleep is the most important factor for mental and physical health before nutrition and exercise. How do we reconcile that with waking for tahajjud or fajr in the summer? So, okay, yeah, so there's a lot of research about sort of the importance of 8 hours sleep, and there's a certain set number of hours that you should sleep, and what's healthy and what's not healthy, and deprived of that and stuff like that. So you have to remember that a lot of this stuff is, if you're deprived of sleep for a consistent period of time, right? If it's day after day, day after day, day after, like, for an entire year, or for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or whatever, for your entire life, all you're sleeping is like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours a day, right? That is going to take a toll on your body, right? And don't forget that 8 hours a day, who says it has to be at one time? The Prophet ﷺ, he slept in the night and he also slept in the day, right? So altogether 8 hours, 7 hours, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be all in one particular time. It has to be uninterrupted. Oh, okay. Is that what the research says? Okay, so maybe there's something in that, and maybe there is something else in the research that needs to be checked and cross-checked as well. Okay. In Islam, whatever brings harm to you is automatically considered haram. So if you cannot afford to have a child and give them a good life, is it okay to use contraception? There is confliction, as I heard that Allah will provide for you, and that is not a valid reason to use contraception. Sorry if the question is not deemed appropriate during the blessed month of Ramadan. No, that's fine. All questions are appropriate, inshallah. And this particular one is absolutely fine. So the idea of using contraceptions and stuff like that, or sort of managing how and when you have children and stuff like that, that's okay, and that is actually permitted. You can decide to have children and not have children if you don't want to for a certain period of time, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot more detail than what I'm about to say as well, so this is not like sort of the end answer to it. But your particular question of whether there is a contradiction between having that mindset and not having children as a result of poverty and so on and so forth, not being able to afford it. So the idea behind do not fear poverty through your children is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to look after your children, just as He looked after you. You had no idea, right? The way you're thinking now in terms of what's going to happen to my child, and is it going to be lost, and am I going to be able to afford it, and so on and so forth. You weren't thinking like that when you were a child. You had no clue what was happening around you, and whether your parents were rich, or whether your parents were poor, or whether they could afford the finer things in life, or whether they couldn't afford it. You were born, and you grew up, and you were nurtured, and you are the man you are today, and you are the woman you are today, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looked after you then when you couldn't make a decision. So he's going to look after your children now when you are able to make a decision. So don't let that be the deciding factor of whether you have a child or don't have a child, right? Don't let the fact that I'm not going to be able to afford it. But if you feel that, having a child now is not the right time for me, I'm going to have a child later, then absolutely cool. That's absolutely fine, inshallah ta'ala. If you are not married though, and you know that you are unable to support, your wife and support a child, then you shouldn't get married until you are in sort of in the ability or have the ability to do so. But if you are married, right, and you're thinking that I can't afford a kid right now and stuff like that, or you just want to delay, then that's cool. But for that to be your mindset that I'm not going to have a child because I can't afford one, who said that's not the way that a Muslim should think. Sorry if you've answered this already. Zain is asking, how do we know Laylatul Qadr might be on an odd night, not an even night? That is because the Prophet ﷺ has informed us. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she narrated in a hadith that is found in Bukhari that فَالْتَمِسُوهَا فِي الْأَوْتَارِ مِنَ الْعَشْرِ الْأَوَاخِرِ, that look for the night of power, look for Laylatul Qadr in the odd nights of the last 10 nights. So that's how we know that it's going to fall in the last 10 nights. Okay, in the comments, there's a couple of questions as well. So keep your questions so guys on Zoom, if you can keep your questions to the question and answer section, that'll be a lot easier for me to check them all out, inshallah. The brain goes through various cycles while sleep. Oh yeah, that's Nadeem going through his sleep things again. So the thing about Islam, right, is the Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim, they didn't have any of these sort of scientific theories or proofs in the science for them to believe anything that the Prophet ﷺ came with. And anything that is backed up by science now with regards to our Islam, it's like, okay, where our Iman increases and our Iman is like sort of more firmly established. But the Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim, their Iman wasn't based on whether something is proven or whether something is valid in the scientific field. It was belief in the unseen that really sort of established and firmly rooted their Iman. So when something comes to us from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and if it is truly from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and something comes to us from the Qur'an, that this is the prescribed practice and this is what is encouraged, then we don't think twice about it. Not because science says so or science says to do it or to do the opposite of it. Rather, this is what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has prescribed for us, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed for us, and that is the fulcrum of our decision making process. Salih is asking, fasts missed due to pregnancy and breastfeeding, are they required to be made up by fasting, or can they be recompensed by paying fidya? So there's a khilaf about that. So some ulama say the one who is pregnant and cannot fast pays a fidya. She can pay a fidya, and if she wants, she can make it up later. So it's okay if she does pay the fidya, but if she makes up later, it's probably better because she is able to fast, even if it is at a later date. Inshallah. Okay, there's quite a few questions, mashallah, man. You guys are on it today. Alhamdulillah. So Nadia is asking, how are you supposed to cover up as a Muslim woman? Is abaya necessary? Are trousers allowed? So there's no sort of like set dress code for Islam. Some of the ulama have stipulated with regards to zina. What is zina? Because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا, that they do not show their beauty except what is apparent. That zina, does that include their clothing, or does that not include their clothing? Because clothing is also coined as zina in the Qur'an, right? So if this zina is their clothing as well, then that also has to be covered with regards to the barda and stuff. But if that is not considered, so some ulama, they don't consider that as being part of the zina, so that doesn't have to be covered. So you can wear normal clothing other than the abaya as well, and that won't be considered as you showing your zina. But as long as your aura is covered, as long as your body shape isn't clearly sort of discernible and defined. Same thing for a man, as long as his aura is not defined, then the realm of clothing is quite open and quite flexible. Are we allowed to pray Taraweeh live online in the same country? There are ulama that have granted that dispensation. I personally do not encourage it. I think that everybody should pray their tarawih. If they aren't able to pray in jama'ah, then they should pray, on their own, and they can pray jama'ah in their families at home. That is the best thing to do in this current situation. Can you please elaborate on the ayah of hijab? The ayah mentions jilbab. So is that the scarf covering just the head part, or the full jilbab that starts from the head to toe? So it's the full that starts from head to toe. So the jilbab, yes, it's the full thing that starts from head to toe. So it's not just the head covering of the scarf. That was called the khimar. That's called the khimar in the Sharia. So they're two separate things. But what that covering is from head to toe, it could include a khimar and something else, or it could be an entire abaya from head to toe, or it could be something that starts here and goes all the way down, or it could be something that starts from your shoulders and goes all the way down, and you have the khimar, like we have the modern day abayas, or it could be something that there's something here, there's something here, there's something at the bottom, like that. So there's various ways of covering yourself. It doesn't have to be one set way. So Nadeem is having a full-blown conversation there. To lose even one day cannot be made up. Would you do the research on the Islamic angle? Because yeah, sure, inshallah, I'll look it up from the Islamic angle. I do believe that there are some things that have been sort of written up about this, inshallah. So Nadeem, it's clear that he loves his sleep, and he's not one to lose out on his sleep very easily, mashallah. Okay. Can you taste the food while cooking during fasting, even if you spit it out and not swallow? Yeah, you can do that. Mashallah. Okay, good. All right, mashallah. So let us go into Surah Al-Saba. What time is iftar today? 51. Okay, so I think we can cover Surah Al-Saba in a couple of minutes, inshallah. It's a fairly short surah, not too long. It's a Meccan surah as well, so slightly easier to digest. And there's not a lot of discourses that are going on like Surah Al-Ahzab. Surah Al-Ahzab was a very, very busy surah. There's a lot going on in there. Surah Al-Saba is slightly easier. So Surah Al-Saba named Sheba because it talks about the people of Saba from ayah number 15 to 21. We'll get to that, inshallah. There is a lot of talk about the rebuttals of the pagans and their argumentation against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was revealed around about the time when, or the early part of the Meccan period as well. So just before the 5th year, which was the Hijrah to Habasha. In it, it documents the story of Dawood and Sulaiman, and in a way that is sort of enumerating the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has given to Dawood and Sulaiman. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ مِنَّا فَضْلًا. We have blessed Dawood and we have favored Dawood. يَا جِبَالُ أَوِّبِ مَعَهُ وَالطَّيْرِ. That أَوِّبِ مَعَهُ, it's almost like the mountains are echoing the words of Dawood. And the birds. وَأَلَنَّا لَهُ الْحَدِيدِ. And we have made iron for him gentle and flexible. So someone asked actually the other day of whether Sulaiman had inherited, the whole speaking to animals and birds and beasts and stuff like that from Dawood alayhi salam. This ayah may suggest that he did. All right. أَنِعْمَلْ سَابِغَاتٍ وَقَدِّرْ فِي السَّرْدِ So anyway, he's enumerating a bunch of things that he's favored Dawood with. And then again with Sulaiman, وَلِسُلَيْمَانَ الرِّيحَ غُدُوهَا شَهْرٌ وَرَوَاحُهَا شَهْرٌ وَأَسَلْنَا لَهُ عَيْنَ الْقَطْرِ أو قطر. So many other things that he has given to Sulaiman as well. فَلَمَّا قَضَيْنَا عَلَيْهِ الْمَوْتَ مَا دَلَّهُمْ عَلَى مَوْتِهِ إِلَّا دَابَّةٌ. So this particular part of the story is what I want to touch upon, which is that Sulaiman, obviously we know that he had dominion over the jinn and a lot of the creatures in the earth. And when he had died, so the story goes, he died when he was sitting on his throne. And when he was sitting on his throne, he was leaning on his stick. And he did so in such a way that he didn't move from his place when he died, right? And obviously the whole idea of like inna Allah harrama al-ardi an ta'kula ajsad al-anbiya, that the bodies of the prophets, they don't decompose, right? So Sulaiman's body was there for a long period of time. It's not really stated how many years it was there for, but it was there for a long period of time. And this stick was the only thing that was holding his body upright. And so the jinn around him, they all thought that he was still alive. So they continued to work and continued to work and continued to work under the watchful eye of Sulaiman, right? Until termites had eaten at his stick and the stick collapsed from beneath him. And, thus he fell down and everybody recognized that he had passed away. And so when the jinn saw this, they were like, oh my God, we didn't even know that he had passed away. And this was basically a sign for them and for everybody else other than them, that the jinn, they don't know the unseen. Although they claim to know the unseen, they have no idea of what is going on and what is happening in the unseen. So that's a really cool story. From verse number 15, لَقَدْ كَانَ لِسَبَإٍ فِي مَسْكَنِهِمْ آيَةٌ جَنَّتَانِ عَنْ يَمِينٍ. So Saba, they were also favored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after the Queen of Sheba had entered into Islam, and Suleiman had dominion over that area as well, and they all entered into Islam. So they had been given all of the things that they could possibly sort of want, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had favored them with so many different blessings. And they, like Bani Israel, became tired of those blessings, to the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for one of their blessings, for example, he had made the towns in which they lived really close to each other, so walking distance. So it didn't take long for them to get from town to town. But what they wanted was for these towns to be further apart, either because they had like jealousy for their neighbors, or they hated some people in there, so they wanted to be distant from them. Whatever the reason was, they wanted to be far from them, right? And this is obviously, Allah has favored you with this and blessed you with this, that He's made you all sort of like in close proximity to each other, but you want the opposite. Just how Bani Israel, they became bored with the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had provided them from foods and drinks, and they wanted other types of food that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hadn't given them. So because they became bored with Allah's bounties. So for their ingratitude, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala flipped over that favor to something that was a lot worse, and they were left there to struggle. And that is all so that you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the blessings that He has given you, and you're not ungrateful towards Him. Okay. So there's a conversation that's going to take place on the Day of Judgment, and this sort of documents it, between those who mislead and those who have been misled. And it's going to take place on the Day of Judgment. We're all going to be gathered in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَن نُؤْمِنَ بِهَذَا الْقُرْآنِ وَلَا بِالَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. So the kuffar in this dunya, they say that we don't believe in this Qur'an, nor do we believe in any of the scriptures that came before. وَلَوْ تَرَى إِذِ الظَّالِمُونَ مَوْقُوفُونَ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. But on the day when the ظالمون, they are standing in front of their Lord, these very people that were saying these things, they're standing in front of Allah. يَرْجِعُ بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ الْقَوْلَ. And they are saying things to each other. يَقُولُ الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا لِلَّذِينَ اسْتَكْبَرُوا لَوْلَا أَنْتُمْ لَكُنَّا مُؤْمِنِينَ. The weak from amongst them will say to those who were in charge of them in the dunya, if it weren't for you, you would have believed. If it wasn't for you and your propaganda, if it wasn't for you and your threats, if it wasn't for you and your constant conniving, then we would have believed in what this man had come with. قَالَ الَّذِينَ اسْتَكْبَرُوا لِلَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا. And they will reply to those who have said this to them, أَنَحْنُ صَدَدْنَاكُمْ عَنِ الْهُدَى بَعْدَ إِذْ جَاءَكُمْ بَلْ كُنْتُمْ مُجْرِمِينَ. Did we stop you from being guided after that guidance had come to you? Right? Rather, you guys are the ones who are corrupt. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا لِلَّذِينَ اسْتَكْبَرُوا بَلْ مَكْرُ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. And those who are weak will say, reply to them, look, you guys, you plotted and planned in the evening, in the morning, at all times of the day against us. إِذْ تَأْمُرُونَنَا أَن نَكْفُرَ بِاللَّهِ وَنَجْعَلَ لَهُ أَنْدَادًا. You ordered us and you commanded us and you threatened if we didn't to worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and disbelieve in what this man had come with. وَأَسَرُّوا النَّدَامَةَ لَمَّا رَأَوُا الْعَذَابَ وَجَعَلْنَا الْأَغْلَالَ فِي أَعْنَاقِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. And their regret will be manifold, multiplied again and again and again, as the situation of the Day of Judgment unfolds. In verse number 34, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا فِي قَرْيَةٍ مِّن نَذِيرٍ إِلَّا قَالَ مُتْرَفُوهَا إِنَّا بِمَا أُرْسِلْتُمْ بِهِ كَافِرُونَ وَقَالُوا نَحْنُ أَكْثَرُ أَمْوَالًا وَأَوْلَادًا وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمُعَذَّبِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He now sort of describes the elite from amongst society, and how it is usually the elite from amongst society that end up corrupting the society itself. And how when a warner is sent to them from amongst Allah's messengers, they say, قَالَ مُتْرَفُوهَا إِنَّ بِمَا أُرْسِلْتُمْ بِهِ كَافِرُونَ. We are the ones who have disbelieved in what you have said. وَقَالُوا نَحْنُ أَكْثَرُ أَمْوَالًا وَأَوْلَادًا وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمُعَذَّبِينَ. And the reason why we have disbelieved is because we are more in wealth than you, we have more power than you, we have more children than you, we have more following than you. So we are not going to be punished by the likes of you. Again, they can only see what is apparent, and they cannot see what is going to happen or what's happening behind the unseen. Okay, so I think we'll stop there, inshallah ta'ala. With regards to Surah Al-Saba, there's a few other things that happen that take place in this surah. There is advice and admonition. There is a call to reflect. قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَعِظُكُمْ بِوَاحِدَةٍ أَن تَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ مَثْنَى وَفُرَادَى ثُمَّ تَتَفَكَّرُوا. All that is required is that you just take a step back. You yourselves, individually, or in pairs, or in groups with other people, discuss with one another. What is this that the Prophet ﷺ has come with? Is it really, truly something that is absurd, something that is out of this world, or is it something that is, is recognizable, is tangible, is understandable? Is he calling you to the truth? And then it ends with some advices, and then we get on to Surah Al-Fatir, which inshallah we will cover tomorrow. I didn't want to cover it today, but time has caught up with us, unfortunately. So inshallah we'll stop there, and we will continue inshallah tomorrow bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We may be able to fit in another question if there is one. Is the head covering a must for women? Yes, it is. It is a must for women. Inshallah, on another day, inshallah, perhaps we can talk about this a little bit more detail, perhaps in a separate session, about the fiqh of clothing. What is halal and what is haram from our clothing, and the dawabit, sort of the principles that we take from that, because there seems to be a lot of sort of questions and a lot of doubt concerning that, and it's really actually quite simple. So inshallah, another time when we do have it, we will go through that in a little bit more detail, inshallah ta'ala. Sleeping 8 hours is more of a new world problem post the advent of electricity. Oh, okay, subhanallah. Okay, so Khawaja has got a couple of research materials for you guys to read there. Okay, Ruh is asking, please do not mute the mic. Inshallah, we won't mute the mic this time, the mic will be unmuted, inshallah. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions. Jazakumullah khair. Auntie Maryam's in town as well, mashallah. Just saw your comment, alhamdulillah. There are a few questions from yesterday that I didn't actually have time to cover. I don't think I'll have time to do now either. So inshallah, do forgive me for not covering those, but inshallah we will definitely cover those either throughout the course of the session or at the end of those sessions, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll end with a dua where we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept all that we have done. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم يا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا إلى طاعتك. اللهم اجعل القرآن ربيع قلوبنا ونور صدورنا وذهاب همومنا وجلاء همومنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم اهدنا بالقرآن. اللهم اهدنا بالقرآن. اللهم اهدنا بالقرآن. اللهم اجعله ذخرا لنا في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم احشرنا مع أصحاب القرآن ومن أنصار القرآن ومن رجال القرآن ومن نساء القرآن يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل هذا الكتاب شفيعا لنا يوم القيامة يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل هذا الكتاب شفيعا لنا يوم القيامة يا رب العالمين. اللهم احشرنا مع أصحابه. اللهم احشرنا مع نبيه. اللهم احشرنا مع رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم لا تدع لنا في هذا المجلس ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا ذا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا إلا قضيت حاجته يا رب العالمين. اللهم بلغنا ليلة القدر يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم اجعلنا من عتقاء شهر رمضان. اللهم اجعلنا من عتقاء شهر رمضان. اللهم اجعلنا من عتقاء شهر رمضان. اللهم أدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا رب العالمين ويا أرحم الراحمين ويا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم إنا دعوناك كما أمرتنا فاستجب لنا كما وعدتنا. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا guys, and I will see you all tomorrow. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا